Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 735 for the 28th of February. Massive changes, again, breaking news, and I'm almost saying this almost on the daily basis. This is going to become the new meta, the new norm. So anyway, the frontline changes first. So a sum up of all these things so that I can do a recording for the frontline changes report. And we're going to start off with the Avdiivka Front, where the main crazy shit is currently happening. And you can see the amount of frontline change. Basically, this is a diarrhea. You know, the Ukrainian forces is now rushing to the toilet. Everything is just coming out, uncontrollably. And this is exactly what I've already mentioned in the past week plus of reporting, and this is actually no surprise if you have been following DPA's reporting. So Ukrainian forces has withdrawn or been pushed out by the Russian forces. The Russian forces have captured Badaichi as they push in, and they also secured even more land southwest of Stepovy, heading towards Semenivka. The Russian forces have pushed through Avdiivka, and captured Avdiivka, and the Russian forces secured Zhevny by pushing a west part of Zhevny, as well as taken Tonenke in a finger, like a finger. It looks like a very long finger, and this is a massive breakdown of the Ukrainian lines. And they basically, if they can't even hold Badaichi, Avdiivka and Tonenke, there is totally no line of defense. Around here, the next line of defense is going to be just as I mentioned in the conclusions yesterday, which so many of you guys never watch. So I already mentioned that in the conclusions yesterday. You may want to go and catch it. I'll put it in the link below for of the frontline changes report. So this is the frontline change over at the Avdiivka Front. Other frontline changes is also very massive. Is over at Ivanivske in the Bakhmut Front. So this is a very unloved battle. Battle of Ivanivske is totally outshined by the situation over at Avdiivka, but is no less significant. The Russian forces continue their onslaught within the settlement of Ivanivske. This settlement has been pretty much a pride of the Ukrainian forces in the Bakhmut direction. It have basically held against severe assault, particularly by the Wagner forces, but it's falling apart as well. The Russian forces have taken half of Ivanivske. The entire northeast eastern part of Ivanivske has totally fallen. We are now only looking at the south and the southwestern part of Ivanivske that is still being held by the Ukrainian forces. So the Russian forces continue to make this push, and is very underloved and underreported. So this is the situation at Ivanivske in terms of the frontline change. One last frontline change is over at Nevelske. So this is just one correction, a small change. So at the Nevelske, at the Avdiivka Front, it's a bit far away from where the main action is. The Ukrainian mapping have considered this area here, this small little triangle. The Russians have taken this, which is not even a surprise because there's no way the Ukrainian forces is going to stay there. So Russian forces continue to hold this position just off Nevelske in a standoff, looking at them, very seductively. You want to surrender? Be my pal? I want to be your pal. As in not PAL, but POW. So anyway, that's all for the frontline changes report. And we're going to go into the strategic and tactical reporting. And for sequence purposes, definitely I got to go by counterclockwise direction. For those that want to just jump to the main action, you can just jump to the main action in the timestamps. And over at this Kherson Front, at the Kherson Front, there's a huge development. First thing first is Krinky holes. According to the Russian reporting based on Ryba reported that the Krinky is still a thing. They say there's the wave of static clashes and mutual strike in Krinky, and their mapping continue to show Ukrainian forces holding a position within Krinky. Krinky holds, alright, yay! So we have more things to talk about in the Kherson Front, and so this continues to be the case. But there is something even bigger that happened. The Ukrainian forces tried to land over here at this spur, this Tendra spur, or Tendra spit. So this this tongue over here, the Ukrainian forces tried to land amphibious forces over here. And it is a surprise probably to the Ukrainian forces, because so far away from what would believed would be the natural front line or natural place where the Russians may hold more defenses, the Ukrainian forces tried to land here, and they still met with Russian forces. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, this is the official report, that the 73rd Marine Special Operations Center have attempted to land on the Tendra speedboat, and 4 of the speedboat was destroyed. The 5th one turned around and ran away, and according to the Russians, 25 troops was lost, 1 was taken prisoner, which is how they actually know who is the unit that actually tried to do this amphibious landing. Rybar also reported on this, so saying that the 5 boats tried to land, and then the forces actually got into the battle. And so according to Rybar's reporting, 3 boats was actually damaged and sunk. 1 was washed ashore, and then the other one ran away. So the story slightly differs a bit. So the one that found ashore, there was 1 wounded soldier. That's the one that was taken prisoner and interrogated, which is why they realized who is actually the unit that was actually doing this amphibious assault. So this is actually very interesting, because long time ago, the Ukrainians actually landed over here. They actually managed to land successfully and actually have some battle west of Porovske, and that didn't work out. And so we would not. It would be hard to imagine the Russian forces actually have forces, totally guarding the entire coastline. This is unimaginable. Imagine the manpower required to take and hold or guard every single front line. It's basically like buying lottery. You don't even know where the Ukrainians are going to come, so you buy every single number. So there is a very interesting amphibious assault that is being reported over in this Kherson Front. Moving on to the Zaporizhzhia Front. At the Zaporizhzhia Front, there is still continued fighting. So this is Zaporizhzhia, just one in case for those that are new. This is the Huaypole sector, Orikhiv sector, and the Kreminna sector. So in the strategic picture, the Huaypole sector went quiet. So the fighting is mainly over in the Orikhiv and the Kreminna sector. There is a fire attack by the Russians on Stepove, as well as Mali Shabaki. But it's not exactly an assault. And there is also similar situation coming over here at Novoporovska. And it's also not actually an assault. So the main push is currently still over at this Robotine region, with the Russian forces still pushing over here. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry made an interesting report. They say that they repelled Russian forces east of Robotine. So currently this. And the fact that they are attacking, they reported the Russians are on the eastern part of Robotine, kind of tacitly acknowledge that the Russians have captured the southeastern part of Robotine, because you can't reach the east without taking the southeast. So which means that the Russian forces actually has taken this place, corroborating the Russian claims. The Ukrainian mapping, I think, haven't get up to date in terms of this part. Ukrainians are also being reported to be counterattacking at Robotine, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. So this is the situation over at the Zaporizhzhia Front. We move on to the Donetsk Front. So this is the Donetsk Front. And the Velika sector, Prashestivka, Zolotinava sector, Voleda sector, and Marinka sector. And the Russian forces continue their offensive in this region here, with more positional attacks over at Rivnopil and Staromayoske and Uruzaine. So this is currently still ongoing, but the attacks are getting more intense. Seemingly all this fire attack may be a precursor to some kind of offensive, and the Russian forces are still conducting offensive over at Novomikhailivka, Georgievka, as well as Krasnohorivka. So so this is the situation. However, based on geolocation, we have Voleda getting shelled by rocket artillery. So all this shelling is always indicative of possible action of Russian divisions. There's no news coming out from Novomikhailivka, but I think the situation becomes very stalemate-ish. And towards the rear, there's a lot of interesting situation. There's a lot of geolocation of airstrikes and attack on Ukrainian rear positions, with a heavy airstrike allegedly 1,500 kilogram bomb drop on Avdiivske, and then there is also behind in the Kurakoves industrial area. Also, there's airstrikes being reported in these areas here. So these are all airstrikes, and so this is most likely a Ukrainian stronghold that is feeding forces towards the front, and this is where the operational tactical HQ is going to be, and which is why we are seeing all these airstrikes. And then there's also missile strike hitting Ukrainian artillery just off Zoriane. So these real actions are very interesting to note, that the Russians are planning something bigger, as there's also geolocation of a T-72 getting destroyed within the southern part of Krasnohorivka. And the fact that it was destroyed shows that, and it's destroyed between buildings, which means that the Russians are actually, fighting this tank very near. So this possibly corroborates the Russian claims that they are now in the southern outskirts of Krasnohorivka. So these are the hits, and then further artillery actions and airstrikes is reported within Krasnohorivka, trying to soften up the Ukrainian position. So we are definitely going to see some kind of a heavy Russian attack going into Krasnohorivka in the very near future. So that's all from the Donetsk Front. And moving on over at the Avdiivka Front, this is the front line that everybody is now very concerned about. The Russian forces are continuing the attack. They have penetrated through Badaichi, Avdiivka, Tonenke, expanded Zhivany, they're attacking Pervomayske and Nevelske. And the Ukrainians are counter-attacking over at Bakhmutivka, over at Avdiivka, Tonenke, and Pervomayske. And there is number of major claims are coming from the Russian side, not the Russian Defense Ministry, but from the open source. So the Russian forces have allegedly taken Badaichi, according to Ryba, as well as Tonenke, and then after this, and also they have reportedly taken Avdiivka. So all this information comes over the past 24 hours, which means that things developed really quickly. And for the Russians to take this much ground and take 3 different settlements in the space of 24 hours shows that Ukrainian forces lines have entirely collapsed in this region here. There is alleged withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from Avdiivka and Tonenke towards Umanske. And the Ukrainian forces at Badaichi have moved to Semenivka, and I believe this is not a holdable position because now they are getting enveloped, and a pincer attack is going to develop over at Semenivka. Ukrainian forces is likely to quickly run away to Novoselivka, Persha. This is most likely going to happen, or towards Novoporovske, and this is going to develop into the new line of defense, which I doubt will hold as well, because apparently, given the fact that there is no heavy entrenchment along this line of Badaichi, Avdiivka, and Tonenke, the lack of heavy entrenchment means that the rear position is going to be even worse. So the Russian forces is going to have a field day if they can continue to keep up with this intensity of advancement and development. Then they are likely to continue to make full use and full development of this breakthrough. And there is a high chance, a high possibility that the Russians are able to do this because, as I mentioned in the regrouping of the Russian forces, they now have a full army group that is concentrating almost entirely on Avdiivka. So let me click that. So this is. So just realized my changes was not reflected. So there's an entire group of army group, the center group is now focusing purely on the Avdiivka front. And so for such a big force that is concentrating only on this front, which means that the Russians would have the capability and the capacity to follow up on breakthroughs. So if you do have enough manpower and equipment, you will not be able to exploit a breakthrough. And the Russians, given the concentration of forces at the Avdiivka front, it shows that we literally is seeing this in action, that they have enough reserve to rotate and continue to push one after another against the Ukrainian lines, and the Ukrainian forces over this area here is unlikely to be able to hold unless they have massive number of reinforcement to proceed to provide covering for the withdrawing forces, and then hold the line that the Ukrainians would need, and also it's going to be quite difficult because if they do not have a heavy entrenchment and fortifications, then they will have to depend on maneuver warfare, and the Ukrainians are severely lacking in equipment in terms of tanks and armored vehicles. So and then for these armored vehicles and all these things, is going to be very vulnerable to Lancet attacks as well. So Lancet are the suicide drones that is meant to target vehicles. So this is going to be one hell of a problem for the Ukrainian forces. So the situation, although there is all this claim about the capture of Badaichi, Avdiivka, and Tonenke, this is only Russian claims. This is not corroborated by the Ukrainian side just yet. So it's important to take this with a pinch of salt first, but there is a high chance that this will develop further. So the Ukrainian mapping only mapped to half of Avdiivka. They gave up the entire southwest of Stepove, and but Badaichi, the one at Badaichi, is not acknowledged by the Ukrainians. This other half of Avdiivka that was captured is also not acknowledged by the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians only acknowledge that Tonenke is now taken. The entire southern part is taken by the Russian forces, but this breakthrough, this finger is not. Yeah, it's this way. Yeah, this finger is totally not acknowledged by the Ukrainian side just yet. But so this is actually a bit weird because in the Avdiivka Front, the Russian forces, the Russian information had always been lagging behind the deep state UAs, the Ukrainian side's mapping. So this time around, it is the Russians that are taking the lead ahead. Maybe it's the leap year, it's the 29th of February, so it's a leap year, so they leap ahead of the Ukrainian reporting. So we will continue to monitor and see where if this is the case. But there is geolocation of Bradley fighting vehicles getting hit by a FPV drone while it was retreating from Badaichi. So there's this strike around here, and another geolocation of Ukrainian forces getting hit by MLRS in the north of Badaichi. So there is some kind of a possibility based on geolocations. So we will definitely have to take note of the development, whether this can be corroborated. But given the tide of the war, is very, very believable that these claims are all correct, and the Russian forces are indeed have captured Badaichi, Avdiivka, and Tonenke. And there is also all this concern about Ukrainian forces getting stranded in these small little bulges at Semenivka and south of Avdiivka. They will definitely going to need to quickly run away. But I don't think the number of forces that is stuck in this area here is going to be significant. It's going to be very small. So we're definitely going to see the continued rout of the Ukrainian forces from now on, because there's totally no way to defend all these areas here right now. The next line of defense is here. This is a pre-war entrenchment, so this is definitely going to be a strong line, and the Russians are unlikely to going to break through that line quickly. The Russians is going to close up to the line and definitely do regrouping, clear up the conquered area before they make other further breakthrough through this front line. So we're definitely going to see more Russian captures until this line, this red line over here. So Acheretini, Novoporovske, all this line all the way to the Khalivka is going to be all gone. The Russians is going to fend down to Nevelske from Umanske region and take Pervomaiske. The Ukrainian forces is not going to hold Pervomaiske if the Russians attack into the rear. So these are all very, very interesting. The Russian Defense Ministry themselves acknowledged they have captured this town called Petrovskoye. So this Petrovskoye is most likely referring to Stepove, because it's something that they have not acknowledged just yet. So this is likely to be referring to Stepove, because this small little town is also known as Petrovskoye, just west of Krasnohorivka. So anyway, we will see this develop, but this is very, very exciting. In terms of observers and war fans, or just war enthusiasts, this is a very exciting development. But of course, people die, so don't celebrate too much. And so that's all from the Avdiivka front. We move on to, at the Niu-York Front. Ukrainian forces continue to counterattack to try to draw Russian forces away from the offensive. Is not going to work because the center group of forces that is concentrating on Avdiivka does not take charge of the fighting over here in New York. So this diversion attempt is not going to work out. So this Ukrainian push is going to be deterred by the Russian forces that is stationed over here to protect Avdiivka. Is unrelated to the forces that is conducting the offensive action over Avdiivka. So this is not going to work. And moving on to the Bakhmut Front. This is Bakhmut city. And in the southern flank of the Bakhmut Front, the usual continues. The Russian forces continue to attack Klishevka, Andreevka, and Kupyansk. So this is a continuation of what we already have been witnessing in this southern flank of the Bakhmut Front. So nothing special about this. Over the northern flank, the Russian forces continue to attack in the Donetsk region. There's no frontline changes, but the frontline change is coming over at the Kreminna. So at the Battle of Kreminna continues totally neglected by most people because this is not sexy as compared to the breakthrough over Avdiivka. But this is also a breakthrough. The Russian forces quickly take half of Ivanivske. Since the last time we reported changes over here. So the Russian forces have made this breakthrough. The entire northern part and the eastern part of Ivanivske has fallen to the Russians. Only now with the west or southwestern part of Ivanivske remains under Ukrainian control, and it doesn't look positive for the Ukrainians. It looks like they will give up this settlement within the next few days because it's just unholdable. They're just unable to hold this. The Ukrainians will try their best to take strong positions over in the forest region on the western part of Ivanivske and the northwestern part of Ivanivske. They definitely want to hold this line around here because this is at least forest. It's a bit harder to clear as compared to a building. So, but this push is going to continue. The Russians are going to continue to push all the way to the forest, and then we will see what the Russians are going to do. And so that's all from the Bakhmut front. We move into the Siversk Front. At the Siversk Front, the Ukrainian forces try to attack Berestove. Very interesting division of all the things that's currently happening in Ukraine. They decided to attack Berestove. Russians resumed their attack over Bilohorivka in the Luhansk region. So reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. We will continue to monitor the Siversk Front. This front is going to be really boring until something going to happen. The attack at Rozdolivka was not repeated, so it was a probing attack. So we move. That's all from the Siversk Front. Over at the rear of the Siversk Front, sorry, I just forgot. There is a artillery system getting hit by a Lancet. Not Lancet. Is it Lancet? Yes, by Lancet. So this attack also shows the Russian forces in this front line is using all this newer form of loitering munitions and high-tech weapons, and the fact that they are using it do suggest that there is some bigger plans coming from the Russian side. So we'll definitely have to monitor and see how this progress because it's a little bit unusual. And before I move on to the Kreminna Front, there is a S-300 that was destroyed over on this western part of Konstantinivka, and this is one of these surface-to-air missile systems that the Russians have been trying to hunt down because so many of these Russian aircraft has been shot down. If you believe the Ukrainian claims, so many Sukhoi 34s are hit. So the Russians are definitely hunting for all these surface-to-air missile systems. And talking about shooting down Sukhoi 34s, I forgot to mention the Ukrainians have claimed another 2 this morning at 9 a.m. local time in Ukraine time. 2 Sukhoi 34 was apparently shot down. So one is over in the Avdiivka direction, another one is the Mariupol direction. So one is probably over the Black Sea, not Black Sea, this what is this sea called? Sea of Azov, and then another one is in this probably in the direction over Donetsk Oblast. So these are the 2 spots most likely. But of course, these are continued claims. But the fact that there is S-300 getting destroyed, this does corroborate the possibility that the Ukrainian claims are true. Because if there is no surface-to-air missile systems getting hunted down, then of course it's going to be very dubious to to claim, to believe that the Ukrainian claims are true. But the fact that the Russians have been systematically taking out all these surface-to-air missile systems in the Donetsk Oblast, that shows that indeed the Ukrainians have the capability to shoot down all these aircraft. So this actually somewhat corroborates Ukrainian claims. Over at the Kreminna Front, so this is Kreminna city. At the Kreminna Front, the fighting continues to be at Terny and Yampolivka, with Ukrainian forces counterattack at Terny. So this is pretty much the strategic situation over at Kreminna. Nothing to really shout about. We move up north. Nothing at Sviatove Front. Over at the Kupyansk Front. This Kupyansk city, and this is the Kupyansk Front. As usual, the Russian forces are attacking out of Avdiivka. We have no further details regarding of this push, and the scam continue over at Sinkivka, where the Russian and Ukrainian forces both claim they are attacking each other or defending against each other at Sinkivka, but there's totally no news about what the hell is happening over there. So that's all from the Kupyansk Front. And at the border region, there's only one geolocation. There's a Buk M1 anti-aircraft missile system, the SAM system, the Buk M1, the one that was allegedly shot down the Malaysian airline over Donbass. This was destroyed just off the border north of Sumy. So this is very interesting that the Ukrainians actually dedicated a surface-to-air missile system in that direction. So yeah, it is a huge investment given the lack of surface-to-air missile system. So definitely the Ukrainians are probably planning to shoot down some aircraft in that direction. Yeah, so that is just interesting to me. So that's it. So this is the summary for the day of 735 for the 28th of February. Do press the like button, subscribe, and I'm going to talk about conclusions. So in terms of conclusions, the first thing first is this interesting raid of the Ukrainians trying to land special forces into the rear positions of the Russians, but the failure of it shows the Russians actually invested huge number of manpower to guard the entire coastline of Crimea all the way up to Kherson, which is unbelievable. The amount of manpower you need to dedicate to guard all the front line is just amazing. So the failure of which for the Ukrainians to actually to drop forces, special forces to create havoc, is pretty much a suicide attack. For sure, I'm sure the soldiers involved knows that, because if you land, how are you going to be extracted? I have no idea how you're going to be extracted. So this was a massive failure, but it was also a massive revelation of what the Ukrainians can do and what the Russians have done. And Krinky continues to hold. Interestingly, information coming out from the Russian side continues to claim Krinky is under Ukrainian control, at least partially. So that's interesting. That's a relief to know that we still have this happening over here. So we actually have been wondering over the past few days, is Krinky still is there still any Ukrainian forces over there? So nothing much to really talk about over at the Zaporizhzhia Front, except that the Russians are doing some very suspicious things over in the Ivanivske sector. The entire Robotine sector have bogged down by the Ukrainians, so that's interesting. And of course, we can't really not talk about this Avdiivka Front. The Ukrainian lines is going to be here. The Russian forces is now breaking through in multiple directions. They're going to fan out because there's not much more things over here. The mixed fight is going to be for Umanske, and the Russian forces is going to swing down after Umanske, let's say, and hit Nevelske and break the Ukrainian hold of Pervomaiske. And the Ukrainian forces must start building this entrenchment. I have mentioned in yesterday's conclusion, the Ukrainians must start building all these entrenchment over this new line, linked up all the front line, all these fortresses. If not, they're gonna not be able to hold the Russian onslaught. And if this breaks, there is really nothing holding back the Russians to hit towards Pokrovsk. And if they go to Pokrovsk, they don't even need to go for Kramatorsk and Sloviansk or Konstantinivka, because the Russian forces can just fan out in this direction, cut out all the resupply routes, and just do a massive encirclement. Massive encirclement. So let me zoom out a bit. If the Russians take Pokrovsk, they can just hit up the road and block off all the reinforcement route, and they hit all the way up to Izium, totally ignoring the entire Siversk Front and the entire Donetsk Bakhmut Front. That entire front line can be ignored, and then the Russian push can continue towards Oskil, and everyone just meet at Izium and all these things. Of course, this is very, very big arrows. All these are massive arrows, but I'm just saying that there is no need for the Russian forces to actually fight in Sloviansk or Kramatorsk. These are precious cities for the Donbass people, for the Donetsk People's Republic. These are major cities, and they would definitely prefer not to have the city destroyed, and they prefer not to fight there. So if I'm the Russian planner, I would not plan to fight in Sloviansk or Kramatorsk as if this is Bakhmut. I would definitely try to go around it and just strategically encircle this entire area and force a Ukrainian mass withdrawal out of this region here. So the fact that we are now seeing this push towards Pokrovsk is interesting. Pokrovsk is a massively important transport hub. You can see that all these roads, the road also extend from Pokrovsk all the way to Konstantinivka. It goes all the way down to Pervomayske towards Donetsk. They move down to Konstantinopil, which feeds Khorakhove, which feeds into the Marinka sector. This is reinforcement and a resupply coming from Zaporizhzhia and Dnipro, and it also go all the way up to the Kharkiv region. So this is a massive strategically important place. And if the Russians penetrate all the way there, and take this ground, the entire front line for the Ukrainians, the entire logistic will just go into the mess. And the Russians can just have this massive thumb over there, and not thumb, you can just be just like this, and it will be powerful enough to cause massive logistical nightmare for the Ukrainians, and it will collapse a lot of the front line much more easier. So this push at Avdiivka, is not a small thing. It's a massive development. Ukrainians, if they do not make a real effort to hold this line, I've already gave you a warning, Ukraine. You have to hold this line, or you're gonna have one hell of a problem. Even though I don't believe the Ukrainians can win this war at all, but if Ukraine continue to lose ground massively, then it's going to compromise their ability to negotiate in the peace negotiation. So the worse they lose, the worse their terms is going to become. Which is why I was not very encouraging of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, because it's a massive waste of equipment and troops, because they could have been used to hold a DMZ. But now you don't have the troop to hold a DMZ. The most DMZ-ish place is now getting breakthrough. So that is one massive hell of a snafu. So otherwise, the other front line, of course, the most important thing other than the Avdiivka front is the Russian capturing of Ivanivske. Ivanivske is falling. Ukrainian forces are holding in vain. The front line keep pushing westward, and very, very soon the Ukrainians will have to escape into the forest and become Red Riding Hood. So this is just there's no positive thing to say. I'm a bit sad for the Ukrainians. I can't say anything positive. And of course, as I mentioned in the SITREP, the Ukrainian counterattack over at Pivdene and New-York is just going to be useless, because this diversionary attempt is not going to draw Russian forces towards this front line. It's just not going to do it, because the people defending over here is not the same army as the one that is fighting in the Avdiivka offensive. So it's just not going to work out. Everything is shit. Everything is terrible. Anyway, thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next update.